Having finished the deep clean of the condo, Sloane wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked around her sparkling kitchen with satisfaction. She had spent the entire 3-day-long weekend scrubbing every inch of her 2-bedroom place. Her hands ached and her lower back throbbed, but the result was worth it. Her phone buzzed right at the moment she finally sank onto the living room sofa with a cup of chamomile tea. "Hello," she answered wearily, seeing her husband's name on the screen. "Hey, Sloane, what's up?" Vance's voice sounded unusually upbeat, almost celebratory. "Listen, I made an executive decision about something." Sloane's guard immediately went up. Whenever Vance made an executive decision without discussing it first, it rarely ended well. "About what exactly?" she asked cautiously. "I took out a loan in your name," he blurted out, as casually as if he were telling her he bought a carton of milk. "Tomorrow, we're going to buy my mom that new car she's been dreaming about. She's going to be so thrilled." Sloane froze, her teacup suspended in midair. For a few seconds, her brain simply refused to process what she was hearing. Her husband's words spun in her head, forming a completely absurd picture. "You did what?" she finally choked out. "I got an auto loan in your name," Vance repeated, a hint of irritation creeping into his voice, as if Sloane were too slow to grasp a simple concept. "My credit score is completely shot, but yours is in the 800s, so the bank approved it instantly. Mom already picked out the model, the color, the trim package. We're heading to the dealership tomorrow morning." Sloane slowly set her cup on the coffee table. Her hands were betraying her, trembling slightly. "Vance, you took out a loan in my name, without my knowledge, to buy a car for your mother." She articulated every single word separately, as if trying to convince herself this was actually happening. "Well, yeah," he confirmed breezily. "Don't sweat it. Mom promised to help with the monthly payments, or I'll chip in when I can. The main thing is she's finally getting her dream car. Can you imagine how happy she'll be?" "Without my consent," Sloane repeated, feeling a cold, sharp fury beginning to build in her chest. "Sloane, come on, don't start." The irritation in Vance's voice grew into outright annoyance. "We're a family. My mom, your mom, what's the difference? You wouldn't deny a family member a little joy, would you?" Stunned by his sheer audacity, Sloane silently hung up. A loan in her name, without her consent, for her mother-in-law. The same mother-in-law, Lorraine, who never missed an opportunity to make snide remarks about how Vance could have done much better for a wife. The woman who criticized every meal Sloane cooked, every purchase she made, every decision she took. The woman who constantly demanded attention, money, and favors, genuinely believing her son owed her the world. And now, this woman was going to get a brand new car at Sloane's expense. The phone rang again. "Vance." Sloane sent it straight to voicemail. He called again. And again. Finally, a text popped up. "Why aren't you picking up? Stop being hysterical. Mom is waiting." Sloane stood up and paced the room. The initial shock was clearing, and with clarity came calmness. A cold, calculating calmness. She picked up her phone and opened her banking app, then checked her Credit Karma account. There it was. A new hard inquiry and an approved auto loan for $45,000. Status: pending disbursement. The funds hadn't been transferred to the dealership yet. Sloane smirked. That meant they hadn't gotten the money yet. They were planning to go to the dealership tomorrow. She opened her contacts and dialed Harper, her best friend who worked as a corporate litigator in downtown Seattle. A few minutes into the conversation, the picture became crystal clear. If a loan was taken out using her social security number and data without her consent, it was identity theft and wire fraud. She could freeze the credit line by filing a fraud alert with the bank and the police. "File the fraud report with the bank right now," Harper advised sharply. "The faster, the better. And start gathering your financial documents for a divorce, babe. You don't come back from something like this." Divorce. A word that had seemed impossible an hour ago now sounded like the only rational solution left. Sloane looked at the framed photograph on the bookshelf. Their wedding in Napa Valley 4 years ago. Back then, she truly believed she was marrying a reliable man, a real partner. How wrong she had been. Vance had always been a mama's boy. She had known that from the start. But previously, It had manifested in minor annoyances, Sunday dinners at Lorraine's, 3 phone calls a day, unsolicited advice on everything. Sloane had tolerated it, writing it off as just their family dynamic. But committing financial fraud in her name? That wasn't a quirk. That was a betrayal. Her phone lit up again. This time, it was Lorraine. Sloane looked at the caller ID and suddenly smiled. It was a freezing smile, filled with a brand new emotion. Absolute resolve. She let it ring a few times, gathering her thoughts, then swiped to answer. "Hello, Lorraine," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, even polite. "Sloane, sweetie." Lorraine's voice dripped with sickeningly sweet enthusiasm. "Well, are you excited? Did Vance tell you about the car? I've been dreaming about this for so long. You have no idea how happy I am." "Thank you so much, sweetheart." Sweetheart. Lorraine only used pet names when she wanted something. "Yes," Vance told me. Sloane kept smiling at her own reflection in the dark TV screen. "I actually wanted to talk to you about that." Of course, of course. Come over early tomorrow, around 9 a.m. I already called the dealership. They're waiting for us. The sales manager is such a nice young man. Showed me everything. The car is a beauty. Cherry red. Can you imagine? I've always wanted a red SUV. "Lorraine," Sloane interrupted softly. "I want to congratulate you in advance." "Oh, thank you, sweetie. You're such a good girl for agreeing to this. I knew you'd understand how important this is to me. I want you to really savor this feeling tonight," Sloane continued, in the same perfectly even tone. "Because tomorrow, when you show up at the dealership and find out the loan has been flagged for fraud, and your son has a felony police report filed against him for identity theft, there won't be much to celebrate." Dead silence fell over the line. Sloane could almost physically feel her words traveling through the cell towers, slowly penetrating her mother-in-law's brain. 1 second. 2. 3. "What did you just say?" Lorraine's voice cracked into a shrill screech. "Are you out of your mind?" "I spoke very clearly," Sloane noted, amazed at her own composure. "The loan is being frozen. Tomorrow morning, I am filing a police report against Vance for using my social security number without my authorization. That's a federal offense, by the way." "How dare you?" Lorraine was gasping for air, choking on her own indignation. "He is your husband. My son. Family is supposed to help each other." "Family isn't supposed to steal from each other," Sloane cut her off. "A cute little $45,000 debt that I'd be paying off for the next 5 years, signed without my knowledge. No. Vance does everything for you. He works, brings money into the house, and you're throwing this kind of tantrum over a car?" Sloane chuckled. "Lorraine, if you really think 45 grand is just some car, then take out the loan yourself. Or let your precious son do it. His credit is ruined. He can't." "Exactly." Sloane felt something inside her finally, irreparably snap, breaking the last chains of obligation. "He can't. And that is not my problem. You two planned this perfectly behind my back. Now you can clean up the mess yourselves." You, Lorraine sputtered. "I'm telling Vance everything. He'll show you." "Please do," Sloane smiled. "Just keep in mind, if those funds actually get dispersed tomorrow, this goes from attempted fraud to grand larceny. He'll be looking at actual prison time." She hung up without waiting for a response. Her hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear, from profound relief. It felt as if a 100-pound weight had been lifted off her chest. Almost immediately, the phone vibrated. "Sloane, what the hell are you doing?" Vance was screaming so loudly she had to pull the phone away from her ear. "Mom just called me in tears. Did you threaten her with the cops?" "Not her. You." Sloane corrected him calmly. "For identity theft and unauthorized use of my financial data." "What unauthorized? We're married. Which is exactly why you should have asked. But you didn't. You stole my information to take out a massive loan. That's a crime." "Vance, are you insane?" His voice cracked. "It's for my mom. She's dreamed of this car her whole life." "Then let her keep dreaming." Sloane walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and took out a bottle of sparkling water. "Or let her take the loan out herself. She's on a fixed income. They won't approve her." "Sloane, you don't get it." Vance was clearly trying to rein in his temper. We're a family. We help each other. Think about how many times I've helped you. Give me one example, Sloane asked dryly. What do you mean, examples? He started getting worked up again. I work. I bring in money. For my own stuff. For grabbing beers with the guys. For my new iPhone. But I contribute. The mortgage, the HOA fees, the groceries, the utilities, I pay for all of that out of my salary, Sloane stated evenly, but every word landed like a blow. 3 years ago, when I needed out-of-pocket surgery, where were you? My mom had to lend us the money because you didn't have any. Yet somehow, a week after my surgery, you found the cash for a PS5. Vance went quiet. Sloane could hear his heavy breathing. Look, he started again, his tone dropping, turning, almost coaxing. Let's not blow this out of proportion. Okay. I took out the loan. So what? We'll pay it off together. Mom will be over the moon. She does so much for us. What exactly does she do for us? Sloane interrupted. She comes over once a week, criticizes my cooking, my housekeeping, and my clothes, and tells me how amazing her friend's daughter-in-law is compared to me. That's her contribution to this family. She worries about us. She's just... Sloane, stop it. Vance resorted to yelling again. You are canceling that police report. Do you hear me? Tomorrow we are going to the dealership, buying Mom her car, and there will be no cops. No. The single short word hung in the air. What? No. I said no. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to the bank to freeze the loan, then to the precinct to file a report, and then to a lawyer to file for divorce. Silence. A long, ringing silence. You wouldn't dare. Vance's voice was hoarse. Watch me. Sloane tossed the phone onto the counter. For the next half hour, her phone blew up with calls from every imaginable number. Vance, Lorraine, even her father-in-law, who usually stayed entirely out of things. She made herself a fresh cup of tea, sat on the sofa, and for the first time in years, felt something resembling absolute peace. The condo gleamed after her weekend of cleaning, 3 days of scrubbing and polishing in preparation for Lorraine's inevitable Sunday visit, where she still would have found something to complain about. There would be no more visits. Sloane glanced at her phone screen. 2, 3 missed calls, 14 texts. She didn't bother reading them. Instead, she texted Harper. Thank you for the reality check. Tomorrow, we go on the offensive. Can you come with me to the bank and the precinct? The reply came almost instantly. Obviously. I'll be at your place at 8 a.m. I'm bringing the preliminary paperwork. Hold your ground, babe. You're doing the exact right thing. Sloane went to bed feeling surprisingly serene. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have any nightmares. The morning began with an aggressive pounding on the door. Sloane looked through the peephole and saw Vance. He looked rumpled, unshaven, wearing the same clothes as yesterday. He had clearly spent the night at his mother's. Open up! He banged his fist against the wood. Sloane, open the door right now. Go away, Vance, she said loudly, without unlocking the deadbolt. I have nothing to say to you. I'm not leaving. This is my apartment too. The deed is in my name. I bought it before we got married, so in the state of Washington, it is separate property. It's my condo. Sloane was surprised by how steady and authoritative her own voice sounded. And I am telling you to leave. Sloane, please. His tone shifted, becoming desperate. Let's just talk like adults. I get it. I messed up. I swear. Let me cancel the loan application. Too late. It's not too late. I'll call the bank right now and sort it out. Just open the door. Sloane didn't answer. She walked into her bedroom, got dressed in a sharp blazer and slacks, and packed her documents into her leather tote. Vance was still standing outside the door, alternating between pleading and threatening. Exactly at 8 a.m., there was a different knock. Short, sharp, 3 taps. It's me, Harper's voice carried through the hallway. Sloane opened the door. Vance was standing next to her friend, looking a mix of confused and furious. Oh, I see how it is, he hissed. You already brought a lawyer into this. Good morning, Vance. Harper smiled at him, a chilling, purely professional smile. Yes, I am representing Sloan, and I must advise you that any attempts at intimidation, coercion, or harassment will be documented and used against you in court. What court? Vance's face turned magenta. Divorce court. And quite possibly criminal court. Harper pulled out her phone. By the way, I'm recording this interaction for our records. Vance opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, then spun around and headed for the elevator, already dialing his phone. Mom? Yeah, she's got a lawyer with her. A real one. I don't know what to do. His voice faded as the elevator doors shut. Ready? Harper looked at Sloan. Ready. Sloan nodded. And for the first time in her adult life, she truly felt ready. Ready to defend her boundaries, her assets, and her life. They walked out of the building. The Seattle morning was crisp and clear. Ahead of them lay the bank, the precinct, and a specialized family law attorney. Ahead lay drama, arguments, and possibly trials. But Sloan walked with her head held high, because for the first time in years, she was doing what was right for her. First the bank, Harper said, starting the engine of her Audi. Then the police. Stick to the plan. Sloan nodded, looking out the window. A strange sensation washed over her, a mix of extreme relief and vertigo, like standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to jump, but not entirely sure the parachute would open. Her phone kept vibrating in her bag. Vance was clearly not giving up. Sloan didn't even glance at the screen. The bank was located downtown, a sleek glass and steel high-rise. They took the elevator to the third floor, which handled loan servicing. A young woman with a flawless corporate smile greeted them at the front desk. Good morning. How can I help you today? I need to place an immediate fraud freeze on a loan application, Sloan said, sliding her Washington driver's license onto the counter. It was opened using my SSN without my consent. The receptionist's smile faltered slightly. One moment, please. Let me get a branch manager. They waited about 5 minutes before a middle-aged man in a sharp suit appeared. He introduced himself as Julian Sterling and led them into a private glass-walled office. Please, walk me through the situation, he requested, taking a seat at his computer. Sloan concisely explained what had happened. Mr. Sterling listened intently, typing as she spoke. I see. This is incredibly serious. Let's look up the application status. He clicked a few times. Sloan dug her fingernails into her palms, waiting for the verdict. Good news, Mr. Sterling finally said. The auto loan was conditionally approved, but the funds have not been wired to the dealership. The final activation required an in-person signature today, or an e-sign verification. We can flag it as fraudulent and cancel it right now. Sloan exhaled. She was in time. However, the manager raised a finger. I will need you to sign a sworn affidavit stating you did not initiate this application and did not authorize anyone else to do so. Not a problem, Harper interjected smoothly. We are prepared to sign whatever is necessary. There is one more detail, Mr. Sterling continued, squinting at the screen. The initial application was filed online yesterday, and a 2FA confirmation code was sent via text message to your phone number on file. Did you receive a verification code? Sloan frowned, trying to remember. No. I don't think so. Wait. She pulled out her iPhone and opened her messages. Sure enough. Yesterday afternoon, while she was elbow-deep in bleach and cleaning supplies, a text with a 6-digit code had come through from the bank. She had completely ignored it, assuming it was a spam text or a glitch. Here, she showed the screen to Harper. Which means someone else did, Harper stated flatly. Question is, how did he get access to your physical device? Sloan remembered. She had left her phone on the charger on her nightstand. Vance had stopped by the condo to grab some paperwork for his office. He had been alone in the bedroom for maybe 20 minutes. More than enough time to grab her phone, submit the application, wait for the text, enter the code, and delete the notification. My husband had access to my phone, she said quietly. And he knows my passcode. I never thought I needed to hide anything from him. Mr. Sterling nodded sympathetically. Unfortunately, spousal identity theft is more common than you'd think. I am officially canceling the loan and placing a hard lock on your profile, but I strongly advise you to file a police report. This crosses the line into federal wire fraud. Sloane filled out the affidavit and signed several forms. The manager assured her the inquiry would be disputed with the credit bureaus, and she would hold zero liability. Walking out of the bank, Sloane felt another layer of weight shed from her shoulders. Phase 1 complete, Harper said. Now, the precinct. The police department was a 20-minute drive away. On the way, Harper prepped her on exactly what to say and what to emphasize. Stick to the facts. Unauthorized access to your device. Fraudulent use of your social security number. Attempt to secure funds under false pretenses. This easily hits the threshold for felony identity theft. What if Vance tells them I gave him permission verbally? Sloane asked. You have a paper trail proving the opposite. The text you didn't see until now. Your immediate action to freeze the loan today. My testimony as a witness to your reaction when he told you. And basic logic. If you consented, why would you be sitting in a police precinct at 9 a.m. freezing the account? The logic was ironclad. At the precinct, they were directed to a desk sergeant. He listened to Sloane, stifled a yawn, and handed her a clipboard with a report form. Fill this out. A detective from the Financial Crimes Unit will take a look. When exactly will that be? Harper pressed. Usually within 48 to 72 hours, the officer replied, already looking past them. Sloane meticulously filled out the report, detailing the timeline of events. The officer took the paperwork, stamped a copy with a case number, handed it back, and waved them toward the exit. Is that it? Sloane asked, as they stepped back onto the sidewalk. For now, yes, Harper said. Now the gears start turning. They'll pull him in for questioning. They'll subpoena the digital logs from the bank. If it all lines up, the district attorney will press charges. What kind of penalty is he looking at? For identity theft and fraud? In this state, up to 5 years in prison or a massive fine. But realistically, for a first-time offender in a domestic situation where the money wasn't actually lost, he'll likely get a plea deal for heavy probation. A felony on his record, though. Sloane nodded. She didn't necessarily want Vance to rot in a cell. She just wanted him to understand that there were consequences. You cannot hijack someone else's life. You cannot make unilateral financial decisions that ruin people. You cannot manipulate and steal and get away with it. Now, the divorce, Harper said, shifting gears. I have a colleague, Harrison Reed. He's a shark in family law. Do you want me to set up a consultation? Yes, Sloane answered firmly. The sooner, the better. They got back in the car, and Harper immediately made the call. Harrison, hey, it's Harper. I have a close friend who needs a consultation on a dissolution of marriage. Can you squeeze us in today? Perfect. We'll be there in an hour. Harrison Reed worked out of a boutique law firm in South Lake Union. He was an energetic man in his early 40s, with a sharp gaze and rapid-fire speech. All right, he said, steepling his fingers after Sloane finished her story. This is a sadly classic scenario, though certainly egregious. The fact that the condo is deeded solely in your name and purchased prior to the marriage simplifies things immensely. It's separate property. What about community property? What's left to divide? Sloane thought about it. His car is in his name. The furniture in the condo I bought. We have no joint savings accounts. Excellent. Then this is a straightforward dissolution. We filed a petition, citing irreconcilable differences. Given the pending felony investigation for financial fraud against him, if he tries to contest anything or demand spousal support, a judge will laugh him out of court. How long will it take? Washington State has a mandatory 90-day waiting period. Assuming there's no dispute over assets and no kids involved, you'll be divorced on day 91. Maybe a little longer if he drags his feet on signing the papers. He will, Sloane said with absolute certainty. Out of pure spite. Then we serve him, and if he ignores it, we get a default judgment. Harrison nodded confidently. The outcome is inevitable. Get me your tax returns, marriage certificate, and the deed to the condo. I'll draft the petition by tomorrow. When they left the law office, the Seattle sun was already dipping low over the Puget Sound. Sloane looked at her Apple Watch. Almost 5 p.m. She had spent the entire day running between institutions, but the results were undeniable. Thank you, she told Harper. I literally don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out. Her friend smiled, unlocking the car. You're way tougher than you think you are. Sometimes you just need a co-pilot. Sloane's phone vibrated in her tote bag again. She pulled it out. 30 missed calls from Vance, 20 from Lorraine. Several voicemails. Gonna listen to them? Harper asked. Nope. Sloane shook her head. I refuse to ruin my evening. Let them scream into the void. They got into the car, and Harper drove Sloane home. The ride was filled with the kind of comfortable silence that only exists between true friends when words aren't necessary. Pulling up to the condo building, Sloane turned to her. Want to stay for dinner? Let's order pizza. Twist my arm. Prosciutto and arugula or truffle mushroom? Both. Sloane laughed. We earned it today. While waiting for the delivery, they drank wine and mapped out the next steps. Sloane felt an eerie calm. Yes, there were court dates ahead, interrogations, and ugly conversations, but the decision had been made, and the bridge was burned. When the pizza arrived, they curled up on the sofa with the boxes and their wine glasses. To your new life, Harper toasted, raising her glass. To freedom, Sloane added. The crystal clinked. Sloane woke up the next morning with a clear head and an ironclad resolve. The wine hadn't left a hangover, just a quiet certainty that she was on the right path. She stretched, glanced at her phone, and scoffed. 12 missed calls from Vance, 5 from Lorraine. She swiped to clear the notifications without opening a single one. Brewing a pour-over coffee, she sat by the window and methodically planned out her day. Harper had given her homework: compile all condo documentation and make an inventory of everything purchased with her own income. The list was getting long. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Sloane frowned, but answered. Sloane? This is Detective Gallagher, Seattle PD Financial Crimes. Are you available to come in today for a follow-up statement? Yes, of course. What time? Let's say 2 p.m. And if you can, bring any physical documents related to your phone billing, passcodes, anything that proves you maintain exclusive control of the device your husband accessed. We need to solidify the unauthorized access angle. Sloane agreed and hung up. Things were moving much faster than she anticipated. Good. At 10:30 a.m., the doorbell rang. It was an aggressive, sustained buzz. Sloane walked to the peephole. Lorraine's face, contorted with rage, filled the fisheye lens. Behind her hovered Vance, looking pale and thoroughly lost. Sloane, open this door immediately. Lorraine's voice was like nails on a chalkboard, easily carrying through the heavy wood. I know you're in there. Sloane leaned against the wall, crossing her arms. She wasn't going to open it. Let them yell. What the hell are you doing? Her mother-in-law shrieked. You filed a police report against my son. Your own family. How dare you? Mom, keep it down, Vance mumbled. The neighbors. Let them hear. Let everyone know what kind of ungrateful wife you have. We welcomed you into our family. Gave you everything. And you, Sloane let out a dry laugh. Welcomed into the family. For 3 years she had endured Lorraine's relentless nitpicking. 3 years of listening to her explain how Sloane was failing at cooking, cleaning, and dressing properly. 3 years of Vance nodding along and agreeing with everything his mother said. Sloane, please open the door. Vance spoke up now, his voice pathetic and whiny. Let's just talk. I'll explain everything. This is all a massive misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Sloane couldn't help herself. She stepped closer to the door. You fraudulently used my SSN to take out a $45,000 loan. That's a misunderstanding? I wanted to surprise. Vance's pitch went up defensively. You know how much she wanted that SUV. With my credit, Vance. In my name. Without asking me. We are a family, Lorraine yelled through the door. What is this mine and yours nonsense? Everything should be shared. Sloane laughed out loud, a bright, genuine sound. Lorraine, I own this condo. We don't have a prenup, but it's separate property. And speaking of sharing, Vance hasn't contributed a dime to our joint expenses in 3 years. I pay the mortgage. I buy the groceries. I even buy his clothes. Silence fell on the hallway. When Lorraine spoke again, her voice had dropped, trying to sound soothing. Sloane, honey, what are you doing? So what, it's a loan, we'll pay it back. I'll help Vance with the installments. Just drop the police report. Why bring this kind of trouble on yourself? You're a smart girl. Withdraw the complaint and we'll pretend this never happened, Vance chimed in eagerly. I promise I'll never do it again. Sloane rested her forehead against the cool wood of the door. Vance, you waited until I was distracted. You took my phone. You bypassed the security to intercept a bank authentication text. You essentially forged my electronic signature. That is a felony, and I am not going to forgive it. What kind of soulless monster are you? Lorraine erupted again. He's your husband, the father of your future children. I am never having children with him, Lorraine. I filed for divorce yesterday. Dead silence. Then, a heavy thud against the door, as if Vance had just slumped against it. What? His voice was shaking. Divorce. My attorney is serving you this week. 90 days from now, we are done. Sloane, no. Vance was openly crying now. Please. I'll fix it. I'll be better. I'll change. 3 years, Vance. I waited 3 years for you to change. All you ever did was promise. But I love you. Sloane closed her eyes. Once, those words meant the world to her. Once, she built her life around them. Now, they were just empty syllables. If you loved me, you wouldn't have committed financial fraud in my name. If you loved me, you wouldn't let your mother degrade me in my own home. If you loved me, you would have stood up for me just once. I have to get ready. I'm meeting with the detective at 2. She turned and walked into the living room, cranking up a Spotify playlist on the soundbar to drown out the muffled shouts from the hallway. 10 minutes later, the noise stopped. She checked the peephole. The hallway was empty. At the SPD precinct, Detective Gallagher carefully reviewed the stack of printed evidence Sloane had brought. The screenshot of the bank SMS, her cell phone location data showing she was at home, while the IP address on the application traced back to Vance's phone, and the text messages. So you state for the record that you gave 0 verbal or written authorization for this line of credit? Never. I had no idea. He was even considering it. And he had access to your device? He knew my passcode. But I never imagined he would use it to steal my identity. Gallagher nodded, typing notes into his system. We've subpoenaed the digital logs from the dealership and the bank. The e-signature timestamp matches the SMS verification exactly. If we can place him holding the device at that time, it's a slam dunk. How long does the investigation take? Usually a few months. But honestly, domestic identity theft cases with a digital paper trail this clean move fast. The DA likes easy wins. Sloane nodded. A few months. Right around the time the divorce would finalize. What happens to him if he's convicted? Wire fraud and identity theft. Anywhere from 2 to 5 years. But if he gets a decent public defender, cooperates, and pleads guilty, they might drop it to heavy probation and restitution, since the bank caught it before the money moved. Leaving the precinct, Sloane felt a strange emptiness. Not joy, not triumph, just a bone-deep exhaustion. 3 years of her life wasted on a man who was essentially a stranger. Her phone buzzed. Harper, how'd it go with the cops? Good. Detective says it's an open and shut case. Amazing. Hey, I actually have some news. Vance called my office line today, trying to see if I could talk you out of the divorce. Are you serious? Sloane scoffed. What did you say? I told him I'm your legal counsel, not his couple's therapist, and if he contacted me again, I'd amend the police report to include witness tampering and harassment. You're a legend. I know. By the way, I have a proposition for you. Remember I told you about my client, Evelyn Sinclair? She runs Lumina Design Group. They are desperately looking for a lead residential designer. You used to do high-end interiors, right? Sloane stopped dead on the sidewalk. That was 4 years ago, before the wedding. So what? Talent doesn't evaporate. Do you want me to set up an intro? The salary is fantastic, and the culture is great. I need to think about it. Think fast. The position is hot. Hanging up, Sloane walked slowly toward the light rail station. Work. She had almost forgotten what it was like to be a professional. She had devolved into just being Vance's wife, a glorified maid who cooked, paid the bills, and tolerated Lorraine. But she used to have a career. She had a portfolio, ambitions. Maybe this divorce wasn't just an ending. Maybe it was a launch pad. A week later, Sloane sat in an artisanal coffee shop in South Lake Union, waiting for Harper. Her friend was running 10 minutes late, which was rare, Sloane had already finished half her matcha latte and checked her phone 3 times. Finally, Harper burst through the doors, a leather portfolio tucked under her arm, her hair slightly windblown. "Sorry, deposition went long," she exhaled, sliding into the chair opposite Sloane. "But I have updates." Sloane sat up straight, wrapping both hands around her mug. "Tell me." Detective Gallagher brought Vance in for formal questioning. He played tough for about 5 minutes, but the second they dropped the IP logs and your phone data on the table, he folded like a cheap suit. Confessed to everything. Admitted he filed the application without your knowledge. "And now?" Sloane's voice trembled slightly, though she fought to keep her face impassive. Harper opened her folder. "The DA offered a plea deal. If he pleads guilty to a lesser felony charge of access device fraud and pays the bank's administrative fees, they'll recommend probation. If he fights it, they'll hit him with the maximum." Sloane slowly nodded, processing it. Somewhere deep down, a microscopic pang of pity fluttered. But she instantly crushed it. Vance made his choice the second he decided her credit score was a tool to buy his mother's affection. "What about Lorraine?" she asked. "That's harder to prove," Harper admitted. Gallagher questioned her too. She played the victim perfectly, claimed she had no idea, thought Vance was just being a successful son surprising her with a gift. The classic, "I don't know anything" defense. "Of course," Sloane smirked bitterly. "Teflon Lorraine. Nothing ever sticks to her." Harper pushed a document across the table. "Now, the divorce." Harrison got Vance's response. He agreed to an uncontested divorce. "He's waiving any claim to the condo. You keep your accounts, he keeps his car. He's ready to sign the final decree." "He caved fast," Sloane noted, a wave of profound relief washing over her. He had no choice. His public defender told him that dragging out a civil divorce while facing felony fraud charges in the same county would look like he was retaliating against the victim. It would torch his plea deal. Sloane leaned back in her chair. "You know what's funny?" she said softly. "I was terrified of this exact moment for 4 years. I was terrified that if I left, I'd be completely alone and I'd fall apart. But now I realize the only time I was truly alone was while I was married to him." Harper reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you, Sloane. Not everyone has the guts to pull the ripcord." "I didn't have a choice," Sloane shrugged. "He pushed me out of the plane." Sloane's phone vibrated on the table. An unknown Seattle number. She frowned but picked it up. "Hello, Sloane?" a crisp female voice asked. "This is Piper from Lumina Design Group. Evelyn Sinclair asked me to reach out. We received your portfolio from Harper." Sloane shot a wide-eyed look at Harper, who gave a guilty, beaming smile. "Yes, speaking," Sloane said, sitting up straighter. "Fantastic. Evelyn reviewed your past work. We were particularly impressed by your Pacific Northwest modern builds and the open concept loft project. Are you available to come in for an interview tomorrow? Say. Iki. 4 p.m.? Sloane's heart hammered against her ribs. "I will be there," she said firmly. "Thank you for the opportunity." When she hung up, Harper was already doing a seated victory dance. "I didn't even say anything yet." Sloane laughed. "You didn't have to. Evelyn is tough as nails, but if she likes you, this is a golden ticket. They handle elite clients. This is big leagues." Sloane nodded, feeling something ancient and dormant waking up inside her. Ambition, adrenaline, and an absolute burning desire to prove to everyone, but mostly to herself, that she was capable of greatness. That evening, back in her condo, Sloane sat at her MacBook. She needed to prep for the interview, polish her digital portfolio, and rehearse her design philosophies. She dove into the work, and the hours dissolved. At 11 p.m., her phone rang. Lorraine. Sloane hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then curiosity won out. She answered, putting it on speaker. "I'm listening." "Sloane, it's me." Lorraine's voice was uncharacteristically subdued, almost pleading. "We need to talk." "Speak." "Not over the phone." "Let's get coffee tomorrow." "Please." "Why?" Sloane leaned back in her ergonomic chair, crossing her arms. "I want." Lorraine paused, audibly swallowing her pride. "I want to fix this. Vance was an idiot. He made a terrible mistake." "That's true." But he is my son. If you just call the DA and tell them you don't want to press charges, we'll pay you whatever the bank fees are. I'll even apologize to you, if that's what you want. Just don't ruin his life." Sloane smiled a cold, razor-sharp smile. There it was, the real Lorraine. No actual remorse, no comprehension of the violation, just a desperate attempt to sweep a felony under the rug to protect her precious boy. "Lorraine," Sloane said evenly, "for 3 years, you told me I wasn't good enough for your son, that I was a bad wife, a bad homemaker, and that I was lucky Vance even looked at me. You taught him to disrespect me, to ignore my boundaries, to treat me like an ATM. And this is the result. He committed identity theft to buy you a $45,000 toy. Do you really think an apology makes federal fraud go away? He didn't mean to hurt you." Lorraine's tone sharpened, dropping the act. "He just wanted to do something nice for his mother. We're a family. We're supposed to protect each other." "Protect?" "Yes," Sloane agreed. "But not by committing felonies. Vance broke the law. Now he gets to face the justice system. You're just being vindictive." Lorraine shrieked, the mask entirely gone. "You're doing this to punish us, because you were always jealous of my bond with my son." "I am protecting my credit score and my future," Sloane corrected her. "There's a massive difference. And you know what? My only regret is that I didn't divorce him years ago. It would have saved me a lot of time." She ended the call and blocked the number. Her hands were shaking slightly, but it was purely from the adrenaline rush. She had finally said everything she ever wanted to say, without watering it down to keep the peace. And God, it felt incredible. The next day started early. Sloane spent the morning prepping, selecting a tailored navy blazer and minimalist jewelry. She looked professional, sharp, and entirely in control. At 1:30 p.m., she walked through the glass doors of Lumina Design Group, located in a stunning converted warehouse in Pioneer Square. The studio was gorgeous, exposed brick, massive skylights, and walls lined with architectural renderings and material mood boards. Evelyn Sinclair met her in a glass-walled conference room. She was in her late 40s, wearing architectural glasses and an impeccably tailored jumpsuit. "Take a seat, Sloane. Harper speaks very highly of you." The next hour flew by. Sloane walked Evelyn through her digital portfolio, answered rapid-fire questions about sourcing materials, managing difficult clients, and budget overruns. Evelyn was intimidatingly sharp, picking apart details, but she listened intently to Sloane's defenses of her design choices. "All right," Evelyn finally said, closing the iPad. "I have a practical test for you. We just landed a branding and interior pivot for a high-end organic tea company opening a flagship cafe downtown. My team will give you the brief. Can you come in tomorrow for a timed charrette?" "Absolutely," Sloane nodded confidently. Walking out of the studio, Sloane felt lighter than air. Ahead of her was a grueling week of work, the finalization of a divorce, and Vance's sentencing. But for the first time in years, she looked at the future and felt zero fear, only anticipation. Sloane woke up before her alarm the next day. Dawn was just breaking over the Seattle skyline. Today was the design test. She got out of bed, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "A month ago, I was crying in the kitchen over a ruined dinner," she thought, looking at her reflection. The woman looking back had tired but fiercely alive eyes. Her phone buzzed. A text from Harper. "Crush them today. Show them who you are." Sloane smiled and typed back. She arrived at the studio 15 minutes early. Piper, the art director with a streak of silver in her dark hair, greeted her. "Come on back. The partners are waiting." In the main conference room sat Piper, 2 junior designers, and a senior executive named Declan Hayes. "All right, let's see if you can think on your feet," Declan said, handing her a printed brief. "We need a packaging concept and retail display vibe for a new line of organic wellness teas. Target demographic: Millennial and Gen X women. High disposable income, wellness-focused. 3 core blends: Jasmine Green, Earl Grey Reserve, and a botanical sleep blend. We need a cohesive visual identity that feels premium, but accessible. You have 4 hours." Sloane took the brief. "Can I use the drafting room?" "All yours," Piper smiled. "Kitchen is stocked. Go wild." Sloane locked herself in the drafting room. Pure silence, brilliant natural light, a blank Wacom tablet in front of her. She stared at the screen for 10 seconds, took a deep breath, and made the first stroke with the stylus. She fell into a state of absolute flow. She bypassed the cliché earthy green tropes. Instead, she pulled inspiration from minimalist Japanese pottery and mid-century modern typography. She created a palette of muted, sophisticated tones, terracotta, slate, and sage, with striking copper foil accents. The botanical illustrations were abstract, clean, and elegant. She didn't even notice the time passing until Piper knocked. 30 minutes left. Sloane reviewed the mock-ups. She adjusted the kerning on the typography, balanced the negative space, and leaned back. It wasn't just good. It was brilliant. She had poured 3 years of repressed creativity into this single project. Exactly on time, she walked back into the conference room and hooked her tablet up to the smart TV. She pitched her concept flawlessly, explaining the psychology behind the color theory and how the copper accents would catch the retail lighting. When she finished, the room was dead silent. Declan took off his glasses and looked closely at the screen. Piper was grinning. "Any questions?" Sloane asked. Declan turned to her. "When can you start?" Sloane's heart skipped a beat. "This is exceptional work, Sloane. It's sophisticated. It hits the brief perfectly, and it's completely fresh. You're exactly what this team needs." Sloane felt a rush of heat to her cheeks. "I can start Monday." "Perfect. HR will send over the offer letter this afternoon." Declan extended his hand. "Welcome to Lumina." Sloane floated out of the building. She walked blindly toward the transit center, her brain looping one single thought. "I did it." She pulled out her phone and called Harper. "Well?" Harper demanded instantly. "I got it." "Yes! I knew it! I am booking us a table at Canlis tonight to celebrate." "Harper, that is insanely expensive." "Shut up, I'm paying. You earned a Michelin star celebration. Wear something killer. See you at 8. Sloane laughed and dropped the phone into her bag. She felt alive. Actually, truly alive. Later that week, she was called back to the SPD precinct. Detective Gallagher looked tired but satisfied. "Have a seat, Sloane," he pointed to the chair. "Good news." The DA finalized the plea agreement. "Your ex-husband signed a full confession to avoid a trial. What's the sentence?" "He pled guilty to felony access device fraud, because the bank flagged it and no actual money was lost. He's getting 3 years of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, and he has to pay a $5,000 fine, plus court costs. But he's a convicted felon now. It's going to permanently tank his credit and background checks for jobs." Sloane nodded slowly. "And the divorce? That's a civil matter for your lawyer, but with a felony fraud conviction on the record against his spouse, he has zero leverage to contest anything." "Thank you, Detective." "Sloane." Gallagher stopped her. "You did the right thing. You'd be shocked how many people let their spouses drain them dry because they're scared to make a scene." She walked out into the brisk Seattle air. It was over. The nightmare was actually over. Vance would face his consequences. The divorce was a formality, and she had a career she loved. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number." She answered it. "Are you happy now?" Lorraine's voice was venomous, shaking with rage. "Because of you, my son is a convicted felon. Because you're a petty, vindictive bitch." "Lorraine," Sloane said, her voice dropping to a glacial calm, "your son chose to commit a felony. I didn't force him to log onto my bank account. He just wanted to buy me a car. You destroyed our family." Sloane stopped walking. The busy Seattle commuters rushed past her, but she stood perfectly still, looking at the city skyline. "No," she said softly but firmly. "You and your son destroyed the family. You destroyed it every time you insulted me, every time you treated me like a servant, and every time you made decisions about my life without asking." "I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped taking the abuse. You're going to regret this. Goodbye, Lorraine. Have a nice life without my paycheck." Sloane hung up and permanently blocked the number. A profound, quiet peace settled over her. She had defended herself. That night at Canlis, overlooking Lake Union, Harper raised a glass of vintage champagne. "To the new chapter." "To the new chapter," Sloane echoed. and the crystal rang out clear and true. 2 weeks later, Sloane stood in the kitchen of her condo, sipping coffee and reviewing material swatches for a new client. Her phone buzzed. "Sloane, it's Harrison Reed." Her lawyer's voice came through crisp and professional. "Just calling to let you know, the judge signed the final decree this morning. The 90-day waiting period is up. You are officially, legally divorced. The condo remains entirely yours, and the court ordered Vance to pay your legal fees due to the fraudulent nature of the marriage dissolution." Sloane let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Thank you, Harrison." That evening, she met Harper for drinks. "So, how does it feel, being a free woman?" Harper asked, sliding a martini across the bar. "Honestly, I don't feel a massive wave of relief," Sloane admitted, taking a sip. "I just feel potential. Like, I finally have space to breathe. For 3 years, I shrank myself. I gave up my career, my friends, my hobbies, just to keep the peace. I thought I was being a good wife, but I was just a coward." "You weren't a coward. You were conditioned to be a people pleaser. Vance and his mother weaponized that." "I know," Sloane nodded. "But I allowed it. I chose to stay quiet. Now, I'm making a different choice." A month later, Sloane was at her desk at Lumina Design Group when Evelyn Sinclair knocked on her glass door. "Got a minute?" Evelyn asked, stepping inside. "We're launching a new division focused purely on high-net-worth residential renovations. I need a director for that department." "I want you." Sloane blinked. "Evelyn, I've only been here a few months. And in those few months, you've billed more hours and retained more clients than my senior staff. You have an incredible eye. And more importantly, you don't let wealthy clients bully you into bad design choices. You have a spine of steel. The job comes with a 30% bump in base salary and profit sharing on your projects." Sloane looked at her boss. 2 months ago, she was scrubbing baseboards, terrified of her mother-in-law's judgment. Now, she was being handed an executive title. "I accept," Sloane said, a brilliant smile breaking across her face. She texted Harper immediately. "Promoted to director." Harper replied, "I already knew. Drinks on you this Friday." On a rainy Tuesday evening, Sloane was alone in her condo. She had just finished a workout and was heading to the shower when the intercom buzzed. She checked the video feed. It was Vance. She hesitated. She didn't have to let him up. But she realized she wasn't afraid of him anymore. He had zero power over her. She buzzed him into the building and opened her front door, standing firmly in the threshold. He looked terrible. He had lost weight, his clothes hung loosely on him, and the arrogant frat boy swagger was completely gone, replaced by a hollow, defeated posture. "What do you want, Vance?" she asked, not inviting him in. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," he said, keeping his eyes on the floor. I was ordered to drop off the cashier's check for your attorney's fees. My probation officer said I had to hand-deliver it or mail it." He held out a white envelope. Sloane took it without a word. "I wanted to say one thing," Vance continued, his voice raspy. "I spent the last 2 months blaming you. Blaming you for the felony record, for my mom cutting me off because she got investigated too, for losing my job when the background check flagged. But my mandated therapist, she kind of forced me to look at it." He finally looked up, and Sloane saw genuine shame in his eyes. "I did this. I ruined it," he said quietly. "Not just with the loan, with all of it. Letting my mom walk all over you. Living off your paycheck while treating you like an assistant. I'm sorry, Sloane. I know it doesn't change anything. But I am." Sloane looked at him. A year ago, an apology like this would have had her in tears, ready to forgive and try again. Now, she felt absolutely nothing. The damage was structural. The foundation was gone. "I'm glad you realize that, Vance," she said calmly. "It'll probably serve you well in your next relationship. But we're done here." "I know." He nodded miserably. "You changed." "No," Sloane corrected him, her voice ringing with absolute clarity. "I just stopped being convenient." Vance flinched as if she had slapped him. He nodded once, turned, and walked toward the elevator. Sloane closed the door. The deadbolt clicked into place. It was over. No screaming, no drama, just a quiet, definitive end. The following Saturday, Sloane was doing some light cleaning around her condo. She opened the windows, letting the crisp air from the Puget Sound blow through the rooms. She put on some jazz, wiped down the counters, and placed a fresh bouquet of hydrangeas on the dining table. She paused and looked around. The condo was bright, peaceful, and entirely hers. On the entryway table sat the keys to a brand new Volvo SUV. She had bought it 2 weeks ago. Not a red sports car for someone else, but a sleek, safe, beautiful car for herself, bought with her own money, on her own flawless credit. Her phone chimed. It was Harper. Don't forget, we have a commercial real estate viewing at 1 p.m. Let's go look at the retail space for your future firm. Sloane laughed out loud. What had started as a joke over drinks was rapidly becoming a business plan. Sloane Interiors. Her own firm. Her own life. I'm ready, she texted back. She grabbed her designer bag, slipped on her coat, and paused in front of the hallway mirror. She used to think that a happy ending meant justice getting the bad guy arrested, making the mother-in-law pay, winning the argument, but she knew better now. True justice wasn't about what happened to them. It was about what happened to her. True justice was surviving a betrayal and refusing to be destroyed by it. It was reclaiming your own identity, setting unbreakable boundaries, and realizing that you never needed their validation in the first place. Sloane turned off the lights, stepped out into the hallway, and locked her door. She walked out of the building, not running away from anything, but walking directly into her own future.